What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Murder Unscripted. I am Ed Hydock, here with my co-host, the sunshine of my life, Melissa Spivey.
Obviously, I wrote that. But that's way better than being the Hot Mess Express that I was last time.
You're still that, but you're also my sunshine.
Aww.
Well, we are not going to waste any time today because we have an incredibly special guest. And this woman is not only a survivor, but in her own words, a thriver, which we want to talk to her about that. So, for nearly 4 years, Laura and her children were held captive and subjected to some horrific physical and mental abuse at the hands of Mansa Musa Muhammad. And he was a man who was supposed to help Laura in her time of need. But this courageous woman devised a plan to escape. And now she has turned her gut wrenching ordeal into a platform to help victims of domestic violence by spreading word about her story. And she's appeared on several shows, including ID's House of Horrors, which is how we met, ironically. And she's done hundreds of interviews, including one with Anderson Cooper. She's a radio host at Cleveland's 95.9 FM. And most recently, her story became the subject of a Lifetime movie entitled The Girl in the Garage. But perhaps her biggest accomplishment of them all, Murder Unscripted guest. So that's how you know you've made it, Melissa.
Obviously.
Please welcome Laura Cowan.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
Laura.
Hello,
How's
guys.
it going?
I'm good. How are you?
We are well. Thank you so much for being here tonight on your day off.
Oh, anything for you, Ed. You know, we go way back.
We do go way back. And that's why I was telling Melissa, I said, I was a guest on her radio show like 10 years ago. Just as
Was it that long?
It's been a long
Has
time.
it been that long?
I feel
Oh, my
like it
goodness.
hasn't. Maybe it hasn't. How long have you had the show? Not 10 years.
Oh, no, that's it. Maybe you good 4, 5.
Oh,
maybe.
then it was probably 4 or 5.
Longer.
Okay, you're right. You're right. Well, Laura, I want to start by saying, first of all, thank you for being here. And also the purpose of this is not to relive your nightmare. You have done that time and time again.
Mhm.
But I do want to
Gotcha.
cover kind of a couple broad strokes because just so that anybody tuning in has some context as to who we're speaking with, you know?
Yeah.
So we cover on this show a different theme every month. And
Mhm.
February is obviously the month of love. And our idea was to highlight cases where people who went into a relationship or a situation believing one thing and then it completely goes off the rails and it turns into something dire and sometimes deadly.
Mm.
And that being said, we've talked a lot about relationships lately, and that's why we chose your story because to me, when you decided to move from Cleveland out to California and
Mhm.
eventually fell in love with Shabazz, you couldn't have imagined in your wildest dreams what this would have turned into. Is that fair?
Really fair. I had no inkling. Didn't see it coming whatsoever.
I want to talk about Shabazz for a minute because
Yeah.
that's how we're just going to
Yeah.
kind of glide into this whole thing. So, he
Right.
obviously had gotten himself into trouble, but he was the
Mhm.
love of your life, wasn't he?
Exactly. He sure was. He was, oh God, tall, dark, charming, charismatic, real smart, and a community orientated person. He would get involved with community work and help the homeless or the soup lines or whatever was needed. So that kind of drew me to him.
Mhm. And what was it about his personality? He was pretty smooth too, wasn't he?
Yeah, a good talker. He drew a crowd every time he opened his mouth. It was just people wanted to hear what he had to say, and that's how we met. Is in a
Mhm.
parking lot. I was coming home from work, and I stopped in the store, and I came back out, and it was like 30, 40 people around this car. And I'm like, What's going on over there? Somebody selling something?" And as I
You're
got
like, "I'm
closer,
interested."
yeah, I'm interested. And it didn't look like a hostile crowd. They was like calm and relaxed and listening and nodding their heads at each other. I said, well, let me go over here and see what's going on. And he was talking, and it's like, wow, he's really a nice looking guy. I
Yeah.
kind of ignored him that first time and got in the car and left. But about a couple of days later, I went to the store again after work, and he was out there again. So I said,
It was a
this time
sign.
here's a sign, huh? I'm gonna go over there this time and just see exactly what he's talking about, join the crowd and just say hello. And I
Outstanding.
did. Yeah, I did.
Well, our audience is familiar with kind of what you went through, which is why we don't need to have you kind of relive all this. But when they all know that about when Shabazz did get in trouble and went away for a couple years, you were
Mhm,
essentially tasked with being a single mother, keeping these
mm.
businesses alive, and let's face it, yourself afloat while you were raising these children. So kind of talk to me about how that felt.
That felt horrible because he was the backbone of everything, the business and all. I wasn't business savvy like him. You know, he kept the books, he knew ordered supplies. I was just mostly there for support. And we had two little small businesses. One was like a little bookstore and it had different little artifacts, African goods and things like that inside, oils, incense, books. And across the street was like a little fish and chip restaurant. And we would run back and forth and try to operate both of them. So, um, yeah, when he went to jail and it was federal time. So they gave him 5 years and he
Mhm.
served all five of it too, with no early release whatsoever. And when he went to jail, I tell you, that was it for me because little Muhammad was about, I want to say 3 or 4.
Mhm.
And Miriam was just only 4 months.
Yeah, Miriam was a baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. So that was it for me. I was like, oh my gosh, trying to take care of those two,
Yeah.
run both the business, still try to attend to his business and get an attorney. And, oh, it was just too much.
Sure.
So I ended up
Well,
having to close both of them, unfortunately.
and I don't wanna beleaguer this point, but that's kind of around the time that when he went away is when you met Mansa Musa Muhammad, and to me, it seems like you were in a very vulnerable spot given that what was on your plate, you know?
Yeah.
So, I guess, was that what made you so accepting of Musa's offer?
Yeah, because I've seen Moose around a few times over at the restaurant and a couple of other brothers in the neighborhood and from the mosque, and they would always come over and chit chat with him. So I was familiar with him, but didn't really know him.
Okay.
And when everything happened, and of course the word got around and spread like wildfire, throughout the community. And I talked to the imam around the corner at the mosque, and he said, "Yeah, hey, I'll send someone over to help you." Sure enough, and it was Musa. And he did try to help him and his son. We try to run the restaurant and run the bookstore. But when you have a scandal like that, you get less people coming to patronize your business. And money wasn't coming in, but
Mhm.
bills was coming in. That's for
Yes, they
sure.
always do. They always do.
Yeah, yeah. So I just
Wow.
had to close them both up, and he helped me pack stuff up, and him and his son. So that's what the trust factor came in at. He didn't show me any signs of anything else negative. Uh,
Well, it's interesting you say that because we spent January covering 2 of the bigger serial killers, Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy, and we actually spoke with in Ted Bundy, we spoke with his cousin as our guest, and she told us something that was echoed then when we interviewed a forensic psychologist in the Gacy case. Both of these killers and almost all the killers we deal with, they hide in plain sight. They have the uncanny ability to just blend in. Is that kinda what Musa did? Like, you would never see it if you didn't know.
you never know when you get on a bus or you go in a crowd of people and you sit down to some next to someone you just don't know, and he just didn't fit that built at all later, after seeing everything about him. Yeah, but yeah, he was so charming, helpful, kind, considerate, everything. Like, just
He had everybody fooled.
definitely. Yeah.
Well, Can you, this is a little bit off topic, but can you give
Mhm.
me an overview of what the
Mhm.
Nation of Islam is, because and kind of what it stands for? Because I gave the kind of
Yeah.
basic Google search explanation, but I felt
Mhm.
severely undereducated about it and to go into much
Yeah.
detail. But I do find it incredibly interesting that Musa essentially weaponized it. Like that's kind of what he did, right? He claimed the treatment of everyone in that house was part of this bigger plan.
Well, with the Nation of Islam, they're more like a set, a spinoff, if you will, from like Sunni Muslims, and they're geared more towards self-sufficiency. Definitely, getting your
Yeah.
own business, keeping your credit clean, going to school, taking care of yourself, eating right, that
Mhm.
sort of thing, and definitely not getting or receiving any assistance from the government whatsoever. That's what they believed in, just
Wow.
starting their own business and just doing for self. So um, Musa was not with the Nation of Islam. He was more. He called himself. See, Islam has so many different sets. So he was under the Shiite.
Okay.
Shiite. hmm And they were a little bit more hardcore, if you
Okay.
will. You know, Sunni Muslims are a little bit more docile and peaceful.
Mhm.
They don't
Mhm.
stir up a lot of rhetoric. Talk about America and talk about this and that. Just anti hate, hate, hate.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of others are doing, and it's bad because that's not really the way Islam is at all. It's just funny how man just turns religion around to fit their own propaganda. It's just sad.
We've
But
seen it
Yeah.
so often through history. I mean, it's literally
mhm.
used as an excuse for these awful actions.
Isn't that
I
terrible
don't know.
though? And I don't understand that because if you're a true believer of any faith, God watches everything you do. Aren't you
Right.
afraid,
Right.
to do that? It's just beyond me how people would just manipulate the system or the
Yeah.
religion and make
And then
people follow them.
and then you wonder if they actually believe it or if it's
Hmm.
like an excuse, like
That-
a convenient excuse,
Mhm.
you know?
Exactly. Hey, there you
Yeah.
go. That's what I wonder too,
Yeah.
because it just didn't fit the bill at all. Um, he was just really rigid.
In your opinion, what snapped inside him to make him do what he did? Like, it sounds like the religion was great, it sounds like he had a normal upbringing. So what the heck snapped? Like, was this monster created? Was he born? We ask that almost every week, but
Yeah.
what do you
Mm,
think?
gosh. Well, hearing the history later, once we got out that situation, because I got a lot of my information from the DA,
Mhm.
Julie Baldwin, and he's had prior problems in the home way before I came into the scene. Child abuse issues. I think he had lost custody of his oldest son. The way he disciplined, I think what happened, he uh, took his boot and slammed down on his right pinky finger and severed it. So, definitely social services got involved on that case, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
child was removed and given to his mother. So he stayed in Virginia with his grandparents.
It's the
But
best thing that could have happened, it sound like.
yeah, yeah, really.
God.
But so it sounds like he's always been like this. Um, what makes people tick like that? I have no idea. I really don't.
For you, it sounded like the worst of it started when you were essentially locked in the garage.
Yeah, yeah.
You had no idea how long you were gonna be there at that point, which had to be a pretty awful feeling, just this endless time just ceased to exist.
Let me tell you, I was in that situation 3 to 4 years. And the last year was the year that you could see a total change. It was just like, oh my God, who is this? You know, um, hmm, I can't say he snapped maybe because he was doing some bizarre things. and I really wanted out the situation. He didn't trust me anymore because he know I've tried several times, and that's when he decided to put me in the garage, me and my children.
What had you tried before?
Oh gosh, it was all kind of techniques. I remember once I saw one of the kids' pictures laying in the living room. It was a little small, little photo, and I took it and I wrote help on the back of it. And when we were outside raking the grass and cleaning up the yard, I threw it over in the neighbor's yard, hoping someone would see it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we weren't allowed to talk to anybody or go anywhere. No one was allowed to ever come over at all. So you had no communication with people at all, none.
Mhm.
And the house is like doom and gloom because it was always blinds are closed and shut tight. Um, it was always dark, inside. It was
Mhm.
just kind of scary. But
Right.
hmm, I tried that way. It was another time when him and his daughter, he took both of us to the store. And we lived in this last place in Awanga. It's real rural, up in the mountains of Temecula. So you have to go into the bottom of town for everything from the post office to gas station to whatever,
Mhm.
grocery store. So I was in the grocery store with him, and I was just trying to looking around. You can't talk to anybody. He's right there. So I decided to go. I told him I didn't feel well. I was going to the restroom. So him and his daughter waited outside the door while I went in. My thing was I thought maybe someone would come in, behind me
Yeah.
to
Right.
talk to them real quick, or tell them what's happening. Maybe they can get help for me. But no one ever came in. And then I looked around. It was nothing to write anything down with, or it was just like that was just a dud of a plan right there. It didn't work.
And you had to know that as you all these plans you were concocting, you had to know that any one of them coulda got you caught.
Oh, did it? I thought this last one did because when I came out, because it took so long, he was whispering, talking to his daughter, and then he had her to go into the restroom, and I could hear from the outside. I could hear each stall door opening and shutting. Like
Oh,
she
he
was
was looking,
checking to
yeah,
see right
yeah.
if I did something, left something. What was taking so long. But she came out the restroom and she looked at him. She kind of shook her head and held her head down. Yeah, I guess that's giving him a sign. Nope, she didn't find anything.
You're lucky.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
kind of glad I didn't leave anything behind because that would have been, yeah, I would have been totally busted.
I guess this is a complex question, but how did you survive? There had to be without knowing it's not like you had to know, like, you have to survive this for 6 months. It was just this everything was locked, everything was closed, and you were just there. So what gave you the will to try to stick this out?
My children, I watched them every night. Was laying on this little cot on the floor, and I say, I said to my son too. I got you into this mess. And I'm going to get you guys out of it because they didn't deserve this at all. And you stay alive for them. You do all you can for them. And mm, when I found, I started looking at some of the old boxes in that garage. There was so much junk in there in the corners. And that's when I had saw the paper. It was like an old legal pad, real long yellow one
Mhm.
and had didn't have a lot of papers left on it, maybe about 10 to 12 sheets. But I said that was enough for me just to write something down. And when you're in that state like that, you don't know, you just doing things off impulse because you don't know. Once I wrote
Sure.
everything, I said, well, now what am I going to do with it? You can't
Yeah.
mail it. You can't just hand it to nobody. So you got all this information in this letter. I mean, I wrote everything down from what he was doing to us, everything, the names of everyone in the house. I even drew like a little map where we were on there too.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. So you're telling me that
everything
you wrote that letter without a plan of how to get it to someone. It was like you
without
were
a plan.
oh,
Right.
you were I'll tell you
Right.
what, because if you get caught with that letter, that's
That was it. I thought that
mhm.
he would definitely kill this. Definitely.
Oh,
That's why I kind of folded up and I slept with it. I kept it right in my underwear every night. I wouldn't put it nowhere because I'd be so scared, he would find it.
Yeah. How did you help your children cope? Because obviously you knew the
Hmm.
situation, the gravity of it, but your
Yeah.
children and in the one, I think it was that Sojourn from Hell show, Miriam said you would just kinda, like, try to calm them, like, just tell them, "Shh," like, just soothing.
Yeah. And it was a nightmare. Sometimes I look back and go, how did I do it myself? It's
aw.
bad enough you trying to keep you together, but now you got two more others you're trying to keep together. Plus, you have a baby who's separated from you totally, and in the house, and you hear her, but you can't touch her. I mean, I
Wow.
was just losing my mind between all of that going on,
I can't even
but
imagine, Laura.
I can't even. Ed, I'm. That's why they didn't put that part in the movie, and it's so much. It's hard to put almost 3-4 years of everything into
Mhm.
an hour and a half of anything. It
Well, you
just.
see the shows that we do, I mean, we have sometimes these
Mhm.
cold cases take 30 years to solve, and we have 42 minutes to tell this whole story. It's just you gotta pick and
How?
choose.
Yeah. It leaves so many open gaps of questions for people. People are just
Mhm.
like, what happened? This, and that. Because you can't feel it all. You just really can't.
Right.
And so it's just trying to keep the kids together. Sometimes we did games. I tried to make it seem like a game to me. If you remember that movie, oh God, it's a
Mm.
beautiful life.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
yeah, and he's sitting up there in a concentration camp with his son, and he didn't want to scare his son totally to death, but what
Mhm,
all the surroundings around him. So he tried to make things like it's a game, and I just try to do that with them too.
mm.
Um, but it was hard. It really was hard because when they were here and the screams and everything going on in the house, where Musa would just start beating on his children. Uh, I I remember how Med said to me one time, "Mommy, is he playing?"
And you probably had to just be like, "Yeah," or just make something up to make them feel better.
To make them feel better. I said, "Yeah, I think they're just play acting. They're doing a play or something, honey."
Wow.
Anything, yeah, just to keep their mind off of the horror that was really going on. Mm, mm, mm.
Laura, were your friends and family, were they looking for you? Were they like, "What happened? Where did you go?"
Yeah, yeah. I found out later on after we were out of that situation from Detective Zirkle. He was a detective handling the case, and he was there on the scene. He told me that my family had a missing persons out on me, and also my husband did too. Because at
Wow.
one time we were talking, I was talking to my sister, but then all of a sudden all communication stopped, and she had
Mhm.
no way to reach me. And, when I did talk to her last, or anytime I talked to her on the phone, Musa would always have the other phone in his hand so he could stand there and listen to the conversation. I mean, he'll stand right there in front of you with the phone in his hand. So, he wasn't
Yeah.
hiding or
No
anything.
secret, yeah.
Uh-huh. But he just want to watch everything you say, and it's that
Wow.
look he gave you, if you look like you said something wrong. So, yeah, they were looking for me. They sure was. I kind of like just disappeared off the grid.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So when you wrote that letter, first, how long did you have it? And what kinda made you say, "Alright, this is it, I gotta figure out a way"?
I had that letter for several months, I would say, because I would
Wow.
write at night when everyone was asleep. I would just write something down, and it just turned into, let's see, about 10, 12 pages. And then I would flip over and write on the back,
Wow.
and anything. I started writing on the sides because I was running out of room.
Where's the letter now?
I got a picture of it,
Do
and
you have one?
I'll send it to you. Yeah,
Please
but
do. Please do.
it it's still I think it was destroyed because the way I wrote the letter to a letter to the sheriff's department. Julie told me to how to do it, to request for any evidence. that that it belongs to you because it's yours. And even the tape, because I had tapes too.
Yeah.
But I found out when they wrote me back, and they said no, all evidence was kept at a certain time period, and then it was destroyed. So
Mhm.
Wow.
yeah, but at least I took a picture of it before
Yeah.
it left. Yeah, before they took it and destroyed it, though. Yeah,
So, how scared were you at the post office?
you don't even want to know.
I wanna
I
know.
mean, I needed 2 or 3 briefs on. I'll be honest with you,
Mhm.
because I feel like I want to wet my pants. I was just trembling,
Ah,
Wow.
because I said, well, okay. Once again, I got this letter, got it on me. He's right there behind me too, in line.
Mhm.
How do I do make this work? Do I just drop it on the floor and hopefully somebody pick it up, or what do I do with it?
right.
Right.
And he's gonna see me. So that's why I say it was nothing but God. You got to believe in something. Whatever your higher power is, believe. Because out of the blue, this guy just came up and started talking to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, just distracted him just enough time because it was one lady in front of me, and when she left, it was just me and the clerk.
Wow.
And I had the little note off the door that they, tell you have a package in town. And I
Mhm.
gave it to her and I signed for it. And she went in the back and got the package. And all it was food stamps I applied for.
Mhm.
And only I could retrieve it because I had to have my ID with me.
Wow.
He was still talking. I could hear him, the guy behind me, just striking up a conversation, talking about the town, how you like it out
Yeah.
here, where you from, that kind of thing. They're just talking. And
Man.
she she looked at me kind of odd because everything I did, I was just shaking.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I started to pull up my dress in front of her, just right in front of her, so no one else could see me. And I reached inside my underwear and I pulled this letter out and I put it on the counter. And I kind of looked over my shoulder just slightly, not all the way at him, because I didn't want him to know I was looking at him, give it
Right.
away.
Mhm.
Right.
But I kind of slid the letter towards her. I didn't even go halfway close to her. She took it from me and she put
Wow.
it up underneath the counter real quick. And she looked over her shoulder. And I
Yeah.
said, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
And at
You
that time, I really thought he saw me. I really did because he yelled out my name. And I was like, huh? And he said, what's
but it was
taking
more of
so
like a
long?
let's go. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go.
that's right. What's taking so
Well,
long? And I told him, I'm signing for it now. And I took the package she gave me. He said, let's go. Let's go. Let's get out of here. And we started towards the door. And thank goodness he walked in front of me because I was able to look back at her,
Give her one
when he
last.
left out. Give her one
Yeah.
last look. And that's when she just nodded. She just
Yeah.
nodded at me to let me know, I
yeah.
guess everything's gonna be okay. But we couldn't ever talk. So it was terrible. I was so nervous. It was that fear is your heart beating so loud you can hear it in your ears. It's just
Mhm.
Mhm.
You were probably nervous even after you left because you're like, "Well, now what if he finds out now somehow? Just somehow."
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on the way back to the house and he was driving. I'm still trembling, still nervous.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, all kind of negative thoughts come into your head. Is she gonna lose it? Maybe she might throw it away. She won't even read it. And there's all that work I put into that, it's
Oh,
gone.
Mhm.
I couldn't even
Right.
start all over. It's just no way I could
Mm.
recreate that. I don't even have the paper anymore to do it.
Right,
So
right.
everything was just running through, and instead of positive things like, "Yeah, she's going to get us help. We're going to get out of here," I was thinking negative.
Mhm. Well, that's how you've been trained. I mean, that you've been brainwashed to think negative of all the things that were going on.
And plus, all my other plans failed. So why would
Mhm.
this work? You know, when I got back to the garage, I was scared to even tell my son. I didn't even tell him because I
Mm.
didn't want to get their hopes up. You know,
Sure.
yeah.
like we're gonna be rescued. Just wait and see. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Mhm.
So one thing we talked about last week, and I wanted to ask you, do you think if the postal worker was a man and not a woman, would he have understood that? Would he like, do you think a male postal worker I feel like, Ed, you're great, but not all men are like that intuitive and that like, I feel like women can almost speak with their eyes to each
Yeah,
other, whereas,
yeah.
like, men are just kinda
Mhm.
there. So I feel
Right,
like
Wow.
right.
Wow.
you're
I know
lovely,
what you're
though.
saying. I know. I know what you're saying exactly, and that's a good question too because I remember an incident with a young lady uh, trying to call for help. She was in a domestic violence situation, and she called a pizza place because he wanted her to order a pizza. If you remember that one,
I do.
and yeah, the guy he didn't pick up on it in the very beginning, because she kept asking, acting odd and not answering all his questions when he asked what you want on the pizza. But
Right.
eventually, it was something about maybe her tone, or I don't know, but it
Yeah,
clicked in. He did come to and kind of like, "Are you okay?" And she wouldn't answer it. He knew. He knew
Mhm.
then.
yeah,
All he wanted was an address at that point. Where can I deliver this pizza? And when she gave the address, he got her help. So it's hard to say, if you're
yeah,
in person with a guy or a girl. Yeah, how
Mm.
would that be? Would the guy take it
right.
serious enough, or could he see it or pick up on anything?
Mhm.
I
Good
don't know. The way
question.
I was trembling, he might have picked up on it if it was a
That's
guy. 'Cause I was shaking
Mm.
so bad.
Mm.
And just that look in your eye of fear.
Yeah. Well, then how long until the troops came? Was it the next day? Was it
And believe it or not, it was not the next day, and that's what
wow.
gave me the hope start going, just dwindling away. It was really the day after that morning, early in the morning, maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, and I don't really know, to be honest with you, what took so long. I
Mm,
never did. I never did inquire or ask. But
right.
yeah, it was not the very next day, but that morning of the following day. Yeah. And oh boy, that was scary because being up there in the mountains like that, you hear it's totally just silent, especially at night. You
Mm.
just hear crickets. And
Yeah.
when I heard a car, I couldn't even sleep that night for some reason. I was just tossing back and forth, thinking this letter is gone. I was just so worried, and both my kids were asleep, and I heard this car, and at first I thought, well, maybe they might be lost, but 3 or 4 in
Mhm.
the morning.
Mhm.
And then the next thing, I didn't hear it anymore. I just heard the car door shut and then another car door shut, and then just start walking, like walking on gravel. You can hear the crunch crunch. It was getting louder, like they're coming this way. And then I didn't do anything. I just kind of sat there and I was scared. I don't know why I was scared. That's funny. But I
Mm.
Yeah.
remember hearing the kids in the house. I remember them running around and they kept saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, it's the police." Because they were looking out. I guess they looked out the corner of the window. They must have heard the car too.
Yeah.
And
His
boy,
stomach
oh
must have
boy.
dropped.
Oh boy, I tell you,
Mm.
Ed. Oh man, like this is it. Where else the police be there? Three,
Yeah.
4 in the morning. It's got to be about this letter. It's got to be.
So I need to ask you this because this came to my mind when I hadn't thought about it ever until we were talking about it last week, and that you've seen it before where a situation like that, and I don't mean to be blunt about this, but it could have turned into a very easily a mass murder suicide situation where he sees the police show up, knowing how he's wired. He could have done unspeakable things in that house.
Oh yeah, definitely. And people kill me
Mhm.
when they always say things like, "Well, if it was all that bad, why didn't you just leave? Are you
Oh,
kidding?" They kill me when they ask that. They really do. and they had no idea they're not in your shoes. This guy was
Mhm.
it's like walking on eggshells with him. You know, you
Mm.
had to be very careful. He had weapons in the house, he had knives in the
Mhm.
house, he had guns in the house. And I
Wow.
knew he wasn't going to go down without a fight. I knew that if he ever was surrounded like that. And you're right, Ed. My fear was he would kill everyone in that house and then turn the gun on himself. You hear about it
Mm.
all the time.
Mhm.
And I said,
Yeah.
oh, no, yeah, it could happen to us instantly. But for
Mm.
some reason, by them coming that early in the morning, it caught him off guard and he wasn't prepared.
Mm.
He was just woke up, you know, and,
Yeah.
uh, and he came out. I can hear him come out in the hallway. You know, you can hear outside the garage door because the inside, the door is in the house, and I could hear everything going on. And what was so funny about it, when they started knocking on the door, and they weren't even knocking. The police, when they say they bang, and
Mhm.
they were banging, boom, 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 like the whole house shook, you know. But there's one thing that was really odd. Musa always he locked all the doors, the patio door in the back, the front door, with these big, huge bike chains. And I always, I never had a chance to ever talk to. It was Deputy Fogel was the officer's name from the sheriff's Riverside County Sheriff Department. And I always wanted to ask him what was he thinking because Musa had to first unlock the lock off the chain, unravel the chain off the doors.
Mm.
You know, the chain just falling on the floor. Chick, 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 chick. He
Yeah.
just and I know they can hear that on the other end, on the other side of the door. I wonder what they were thinking. And he
Yeah.
finally opened the door, and I could hear a little muffling, mumble noise talking, but I couldn't make out what was being
Mhm.
said. Then I heard the door shut again. And I thought, that's odd. He shut the door on the police? And then
Yeah.
my door opened, the door that led into the garage. It opened up, and he looked in there and he says, "The police are out here and they're asking for you. You know what this is about?" And I go, "No, I don't know." "Well, get out here and see what they want and get them off my property." That's all he said. And I started to walk out, and I had the kids with me. He said, "No, no, no, they stay here. You come on out here." And I looked back at little Muhammad and I'm like, oh God, he just looked so
Mhm.
sad. Like, are you coming back, mama?
Yeah.
And I went on out there and Musa was right behind me. He was so close, Ed, that you can feel the breath on my neck. He
Mm.
was that close
Ugh.
behind me. And I
Awful.
opened the door and there was Officer Fogel. And he had another officer with him on the side. And he had this paper in his hand, but it didn't look like my letter. But it found out it was my letter. It was just a copy.
Oh,
It
a
wasn't
copy.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't a yellow one. It wasn't the original.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
asked me, "Are you Laura Cowan?" I go, "Yes." And then he started to raise the letter up and goes, I know he was going to say, "Did you write this?" But then I kind of gave him the eyes, like,
Yeah, like, I can't
kind
tell
of
you, but yeah.
like, he picked up
Yeah.
on it because he stopped talking in midstream.
Melissa, men are intuitive. See?
Okay, that's a police officer,
That's
so
a police officer. He picked up on the body language really quick. He sure did.
have you kept with him or anybody like the postal worker?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
I would say later, way years later, um, David Kelly from the LA Times and his photographer came out to do an interview about the situation. Matter of fact, they did like a little multimedia piece. They showed pictures, everything, because they had interviewed all the kids back there too, and then they wanted to come out and interview me. And I remember getting a call a few days later from Irfan, his photographer, and he says, "I went back to take some more pictures at the post office, and guess who I ran into?" I said, "Who?" He said, "I ran into Ruth." Ruth? Who's Ruth?
Yeah, you
He
didn't
said,
know her
that's
name.
the,
Yeah.
that, uh-huh. I didn't know her name. He said, that's the postal worker who rescued you. I said, are you kidding? She's still there? He said, yeah, she's still there. You want to talk to her? And I'm like, oh my God, I can, yeah. And so he put her on the phone and she goes, hi, Laura. And I go, oh my God, Ruth. I was just like, oh, thank you so much for
Yeah.
everything. And she goes, girl, I know, I felt it. I saw it on your face and you were nervous. I knew something was wrong.
You saved your life.
Yeah, yeah, saved my life. So
Ah,
Wow.
I thanked her.
unbelievable. Well, your story is so heroic, and I want to talk about briefly some of the aftermath because I imagine that once you were free from this situation, it had to take years to recover from, and I'm guessing therapy and just learning how to be normal again.
Therapy, man, we were in therapy for over 8 years, Ed, me and the kids. Oh my gosh, we had to. We've had therapy, we had group therapy, we had single one-on-one therapy, we had pet therapy, we had everything you could
All the
think of.
therapies.
I know.
Ah,
And especially the children because oh yeah,
from what I've seen, just from following a little bit, I mean, they look like they're doing great.
yeah. My children are, but unfortunately, like I said, when I talked to the DA too a long time ago after that, his children really suffered a lot. They were they never received therapy.
Oh.
They were separated because they were in like social workers put them in different group homes, you know.
Mhm.
Mm.
So it was just really hard for them, really, really hard. Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Wow.
Well, that kinda leads into what I'm hoping isn't a sore subject, but I could see if it was, and we can cut it out if it is, but I wanna talk for a second about that Dr. Phil episode because I saw that come up, and I was honestly shocked because when I click on that and I saw the faces that were involved, I thought it was gonna be a story of hope and about a reunion, and I turn it on and it's basically 4, and if you count the people in the crowd, 8 against 1 saying, "You're
Right,
full of it."
right.
Mm.
Exactly.
What's your impression of that whole situation?
Oh man, it was so terrible. The main reason I came on that show, it was mostly to reunite, Taslima with them.
Mhm.
Um, because I had to tell you, their mindset back then, Ed, when they were little, was totally brainwashed. I mean, they had no, I mean, Musa was it to them. He was the voice. He told them when to eat, when to go to sleep, when to wake up, what to do, what to dress, everything. And it was no outside uh, relatives, family. They didn't even go to school. They were homeschooled.
Wow.
So he was the center of their life. He's all they knew. So they just gravitate on everything, that he said what must be true, must be, legit. But
Right.
after everything was over with, and he was found guilty and he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms. I remember one day, Julie Baldwin called me and she goes, the kids would like to reach out to you. They wanted me to see if I would give them your number. And I
Mhm.
said, I
Yeah.
kind of hesitated, because I
Yeah.
remember how they were back in that house. They weren't friendly. They weren't friendly at all, but
Mhm.
they were just really following instructions of him. So that I
Sure.
didn't. But I said, okay. I went ahead and went along with it. And then we all did end up talking. And they were so, so humble and so, grateful that, I got them out that situation. And we all became, I won't say friends, but we all became kind of mutual understanding
Mhm.
of Taslima's their sisters. That's the main reason
Right.
I wanted to
Yeah.
reconnect with them. But
Right.
later on, after that reunion, I saw a lot of stuff again. And I saw that those red flags popping up, that
Mhm.
they weren't well. They weren't well at all. They had a lot of issues going on, um, a lot of hatred and anger. Um,
Yeah.
They wanted to borrow money all the time, and I was sending it to them. I
Mhm.
did because I wanted to help them, but it got to be too frequent. And then when you
Well,
stop,
yeah,
all of a sudden they became really angry
you're the
with
bad
you.
yeah, you're the bad
Yeah.
Yeah,
guy then. Yeah.
you're the bad guy. So it's like, I sat down and I had a talk with my daughter, and I said, when you're 18 years old, you could probably do whatever you want. But right now, dear, I can think under my watch, we need to cut this off. We
Good
really
for
Mhm.
do.
you.
It's not going to work. It's not. It's just something about them. It's just not going to work. And she was in
Sure.
agreement too after talking to them. She didn't feel comfortable either around them much over
Wow.
the phone, the way they were behaving. So
Mhm.
we decided, yeah, we were all on Facebook together, everything. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I unfriended him, and she did too. And that's when the hell started. When
Mhm.
you block your number,
Yep.
It's so sad because you guys were all in this together, and that's when I turned that on, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to see Laura interact with the children," and then mm,
right?
it was awful to
Exactly.
see.
And I wasn't really,
Oh
to be
god.
honest with you, I wasn't supposed to be up there, Ed. It was just supposed to be my
Really?
daughter up there with them. But I don't know. Somehow Dr. Phil said, "Well, why don't you come out and tell your story?" Like, I didn't think I was here for me, supposed
Yeah,
to be
right,
here
right.
Yeah.
for her.
Wow.
But then when I came out to tell my story, the next thing I know, they cut the break and they were bringing out chairs. And I'm like, well, one chair next to me, that's for Taz when she comes out. But what's this about,
Mhm. Right.
And yep, next thing you know, they all were, and they weren't looking happy. They were angry,
I
looking as
cannot
you know,
believe you were
they
blindsided
were
like that.
blindsided really badly. And even who came on the show with me was Detective Zirkle. He was on the show with me, and I remember Dr. Phil had asked him a question while he was sitting on the front row in the audience because he had the mic on. And I think he asked what was the conditions of the garage, something like that. So I remember when they started what the word badgering me, and saying this and that and everything else. I remember looking over at Detective Zirkle. He was actually talking, but his mic was cut off. So no one
Wow.
even heard anything what he was saying.
Wow,
And I
that's
looked at
awful.
Taslima and I said, we should just get up and walk off this stage. Really,
I
we
Mhm.
really
wouldn't have
should.
blamed you.
Because yeah, yeah, but by that time the show was almost really over. It was
Yeah,
really
so
over.
what's the
And
point?
it was
Yeah.
like, what's the point? Yeah, might as well just sit
Mhm.
here. But yeah, it was really bad. All it was, really was just a team up against me kind of thing. And I feel sorry. I know that they had a lot of mental health issues behind all of this.
Mhm.
I knew that. And
Mhm.
I didn't even want to say, to be honest with you, say anything negative to them, because I really felt sorry for them. Really, I did.
Sure,
And
sure.
then I said, well, anybody else would have been, it'd have been like a Jerry Springer show. I'd have said something, they'd have said something, I would have said something, no, I'm not going.
Chair goes flying, yeah, so
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm not even going down that aisle.
Oh,
I'm not
wow,
doing it. Yeah. So that's
man.
why. And it's just really unfortunate because I really thought maybe they would have a relationship with their sister. But after that one, she doesn't want anything to do with them whatsoever, ever, 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 ever.
Do not
Then I
blame 'em.
find out
Do not
later,
blame 'em.
Ed. I find out again after this movie came out too. I found out from the DA because I wanted her to watch it. And I talked to her about it. And she told me that they're actually, I don't know how she find these things out, but she knows. She said they're actually going and visiting him at the jail. They're talking, they're having conversation.
Huh.
And my mouth dropped like,
Oh,
oh my God, he still got a hold on them. He
yeah.
really still got a hold on them. They'll never be free. They'll
Mm-mm.
No,
never, no, he still got them. They're grown adults now. They're in their 30s.
but that's, I think, why they treated you the way they did. They've been brainwashed their whole life.
Mhm.
all their life. Yeah. And it's so, gosh, I just can't believe that somebody is that powerful. They got a hold on you set that deeply like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Unreal,
it,
Laura.
it
Well,
is really it.
let's let's talk. We're going to wrap up soon, but I want to talk about your real purpose in life, your the
Mm,
victim advocacy, because that's what I think that's what you were put on this earth to do. Honest to God.
mm,
So we've
mm,
covered a lot of super heavy cases lately, and many of which
yeah,
were murders that started with domestic violence, because a lot of them do,
mhm,
unfortunately.
Mhm.
So,
yeah.
what advice would you give our listeners if they suspect a friend or a loved one is in a troubled relationship?
Mm. Yeah, if you suspect a friend or a loved one, because I know a lot of family wants to help and reach out and do things for people, and when they're in that situation. But my thing is this: you don't want to get totally involved because you can end up involved, if you know what I mean. So you want to be safe about it. You just want to maybe have resources available. You want to maybe to talk to that person and listen to them because a lot of times we don't listen. We like to overtalk people,
Mhm.
and you have to have a good ear, and you really have to be not judgmental too. Because when a victim is telling you their story and they're telling you what's happening to them, don't put yourself in their shoes. Like, well, I would have did this if I were you.
Mhm.
You don't know what you would have done,
Mhm.
in that situation. So just be, compassionate, be understanding, have resources for them, and encourage them. Let them know that you're there for them,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
eventually they will find the path, and they'll know that they'll come to you for help when they're ready. Because a lot of women they leave situations, but they go back. They
Mhm.
Mhm.
weren't really totally ready. So they
Right.
have to be ready, and they'll know when they're ready. You know when you're ready to go. So just again, just be a good listener to them when they talk to you, and just try to offer them some support and resources, mostly to help them with the situation. Because you're not the professional, but you want to make sure
Right.
they get the professional help. Yeah. That's why I say never go to family and relatives and want to stay with them because they're not the doctor and nurses. They're not the professionals.
And they all have advice like they are, though.
Have advice. It is not always good advice. They might mean well, but yeah, and
Yeah, they don't
most
know.
families they got that motto now. Whatever happens in the home stays in the home. Like they don't want to talk about
Mhm.
it to anybody else, and that's a old taboo
Mhm.
we need to get out of. We
Yeah.
really do.
Wow.
hmm So working now with the housing authority, I run across a lot of young people. I would even say young men. But men go through it too now. They do that goes through domestic violence and just trying to get them the assistance and resources and help them maybe relocate because sometimes they have to move just for their own safety. This is the things I do.
Unbelievable story. Well, and it was a story that warranted a Lifetime movie. Not everybody can say they're the subject of a
Wow.
Lifetime movie. And Melissa actually just watched it the other night and had trouble getting through it just because of all the
I had to turn it off. I couldn't handle it. I'm sorry.
Man,
just watching what was going on.
Just yeah.
mhm. Melissa, all I can tell you is Lifetime is really soft because they did hardly show anything like what was really going on in there. Yeah.
I couldn't handle it.
Oh yeah, if they really showed. I mean, Ed knows some of it because he's had, you know, the case with me. And he would beat the children so bad, he would punish them when they didn't know the different Quran verses because they had to recite all the time. He would make them eat their own vomit when they vomit. He would shove feces in their mouth. It was all kind of things, hon. Oh my gosh. And I know Lifetime could not show that. It's just nowhere in the world.
Mm,
Maybe Netflix could have, but not,
Maybe. Maybe
but
Netflix.
not Lifetime. Mm-mm. No,
Wow,
no, no,
definitely
no.
not.
Definitely not. Oh my gosh. I tell you about the honey scene.
No.
Oh,
no.
ooh. For one of the punishments for the kids, I think it was the oldest one too. uh, Musa had some rice in a bowl, and they went in the refrigerator because one time I guess he didn't lock it up because he usually put chains around the refrigerator door, and they got into that rice. He had a fit. He had them all lined up, and they show that part in the movie too. He went
Mhm.
down the road, each one, this, who stole my rice. And when he got to his oldest son, he wouldn't tell him. So what he did, he sent them all to their room, and he went in the backyard and he dug this hole. Took a while, but he dug a hole. Then he told Jihad to come out there, his son, and he put him in that hole. Then he poured honey on top of his head. Now, this it didn't compute what was going on, but later on, I could hear Jihad started screaming because the ants had covered
Ants.
his. Yeah, covered
Ah,
him instantly. Them big red ants, they were all over him, biting him. And yeah, he told who ate the rice. He sure did. But that was some of the torture techniques he used.
Mhm.
we were supposed to end on something happy. Why'd you do
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I wanna know, I know there's a picture, so you've met her, but I thought the actress who played you was adorable, and I loved the beginning with you and Shabazz meeting, like, I thought that was so cute. They were adorable.
Yeah.
I was telling Ed, I was like, "It was such a meet cute," like, they did I felt like they had a very good chemistry, the 2 of them together.
Mm-hmm. That's Paige. Paige Hurd. She's so sweet. I met her and she was just adorable. I
She
did a
is.
couple of Zoom calls with her because she just wanted to talk to me and just get my mannerisms down. And I said, honey, just be you, whatever you do, because no one could be me.
Mhm.
Just so
That's a fact.
she
No
did,
one is
she
you.
she did an excellent job, Ed. She really did. And
It's
oh,
so
but
awesome.
Stephen had a hard time though. Stephen Bishop, he
Mm,
played Musa
Mhm.
because he said it was no pictures out there, no footage, no video, so he really couldn't get the character down. I
sure.
He was
told him,
terrifying.
yeah, I
He
told
made
him, Stephen, j-
oof,
just be as evil as you can,
yeah.
cool and mild mannered.
Mhm.
You'll get your point across. And he did well. He sure did.
That had to be a weird experience directing someone how to act as the man who did all these bad things to you.
Isn't that weird? It is weird
Like,
because they made me co-producer on this project too.
no kidding.
Yeah, Lifetime, they sure did. They had me co-producer. I got the script. We went through it, edited, took some stuff out, put some stuff in. It was like,
Hmm,
yeah, yeah, they sure
good for
did. They
you.
flew me out there, and that's where I met most of the cast. And we sat down and went over a few scenes. So yeah, yeah, he picked up well. He did very good. That inner self had to come out.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you that this movie I know I've been catching all the posts about it, and then we checked it out. It's just I'm so happy for you that this ended with something on a positive note, that you have turned this whole
Yeah,
situation into something
yeah.
positive,
Could you imagine when this was happening, like, you'd be sitting here with a Lifetime movie, that's so wild.
right?
While I was sitting in that garage, that was
Yeah.
never the thought. Never the thought. Didn't see
No.
that coming at all whatsoever. I kept seeing death. That's all I kept seeing. I said, we're not going to get out of here. Someone's going to die in this house. We're not going to get out alive. But there you go.
You
God
did.
had the other vision. Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Ed, for everything. Thank you for being so patient because you don't want to had to interview me.
I can't thank you enough for being here, and I'm proud to call you a friend, Laura. Seriously, thank
Oh,
you.
Ed, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And in closing, I will say this real quick though, Ed and Melissa, listen carefully. You never know who's listening to your podcast, my dear. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because I had got a DM on Facebook from the producer, and he said he heard my story on a podcast because we did a podcast here in Cleveland. It was a true crime podcast on Channel 19 called The Dark Side, and he heard the story, and he said, "Oh, this would be a great movie." So they researched and tried to find me, and he couldn't find me. And he saw my Facebook page and he DM'd me, and the rest is history.
Man,
So
hear
you
that, Melissa?
never
Big
know.
things. Big
Yeah,
things on the
totally.
horizon. So, Laura, before we wrap up, what do you want to plug? When's your radio show on? Where can people find it? When does it air?
Yeah, it airs every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Dear Miss Laura, and it's on WOBU. That's 95.9 FM. Of course, you can't hear it because you're not, in town to be on the radio to
Mhm.
listen. You can always go to the website, though. That's www.wovu.org, and click on the Listen Live button at the top on Mondays. And it airs every Monday, 1 o'clock. And we talk about everything from domestic violence, 101, human trafficking, you name it. I've had a couple of guests on my show, Ed. I'm gonna tell you one
Mhm.
that personally.
Oh,
I've had Mildred Muhammad on my show.
no kidding.
Yeah, she's the wife,
Wow.
the
Oh,
ex-wife of the
yeah,
DC
yeah.
sniper. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
she's been on my show to talk about him. Oh my gosh. I've
Wow.
had Tanya Brown on my show, and
Oh, I
she's
know
the
who that is.
baby sister of Nicole
Mhm.
Brown's sister. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Yep.
she's
Wow.
been on too. So, and we became good friends after that. And people always ask you, "Well, how did you get these people? How did you?" All I did was went to LinkedIn and just inbox them and say, "Hey, would
People
you
are
be
more cooperative
interested?"
than you think.
yeah.
For them, right? It was no PR person to block you, or yeah. So
It's like if you don't ask, you'll never find out. So it
there
doesn't
Mhm.
you
hurt.
go. There you go, huh?
Oh, Laura, thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Oh, it's great meeting you. And thank you, Ed, for
Thank
this. Thank you. Nice
you.
to meet you, Melissa. Take care, guys.
You got it.
Bye.
Well, there you have it.
Wow.
The tale of Laura Cowan.
That was intense. And I don't know how she stays so it reminds me of Jodie from Block 3, just like how she's so sweet and kind and still has faith in humanity.
She's just so nice too. She's so pleasant to work with all the time. Every time we talk, and she's so eager to tell her story, to keep getting the word out. Like, don't let people forget what happened, which is so important.
So important. Well, we have one more episode coming up in this block, and I'm covering that next week. And it is a doozy, but it's all about how a fairy tale romance can go so badly so quickly. And I might tell you a really good poem about Nantucket next week, but we'll see.
Will it rhyme? That's all I want to
Oh,
know.
absolutely it will. Just think about what rhymes with Nantucket.
Can I guess 4 words that it will be?
Yes. And listeners, if you want to guess, you can hit us up on our socials. Facebook, Insta, TikTok at Murder Unscripted. You can email us at murderunscriptedpod@gmail.com, or you can go on our website with all the wwws.murderunscriptedpod.com. And I think that is all we have today. And just be careful out there. Like,
hmm You never know what situation is going to turn very bad.
and I'm going to say it again, you never know who's a pervert because they don't wear signs.
Is that too much to ask?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Bye.